is king. In the time of censorship, non-compliance is key. From an undisclosed location in FEMA Region 10, it's your host, Joshua Michael.
Welcome, folks, to March 25th, 2023. This is Non-Compliant America. I'm your host, Joshua Michael. And 2023 has not been a boring year. I'll tell you, it just seems like every day, every week, there's just some more catastrophic thing happening, meant to distract you, meant to divert from the great things and the great momentum that's happening on how we are capturing and recapturing essentially the American system and the American spirit. And the Great Awakening is happening. We are underway under that. And the best and most important thing that we can always do is focus on ourselves and focus on our local communities. And capturing local communities or recapturing them from the global tyrants that have essentially infiltrated even down to a local level. And we talk about it all the time on this show about how do we fight back and how do we do that. And so I had to bring in probably the best, most prominent individual associated with the local element, just in the grassroots, fighting, trying to get the good people elected, trying to help with campaigns, trying to expose the voter fraud here in FEMA Region 10, formerly known as Oregon, trying to do all of these good and great things. And that's Mr. Don Powers. Mr. Don Powers, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very happy to be here. We've tried to do this for several months now, so I'm glad we were able to finally make it happen today.
Yeah, it's almost a year. It's almost been a year.
Okay, that's my fault.
It's both of us. But it's great to have you here. And Don, you are just such a role model as far as getting out there, just getting in the weeds and getting in the thick of things, putting your money where your mouth is, and really seeing and getting involved, because I don't think you've been involved in politics your whole life. It's not something you're born into. It's just one day you said enough's enough and you're just going to get involved, because tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of talk about some things that are going on in the local legislation and how people can do and what they can do to fight back against that.
Yeah, background-wise, I was a former software tech or executive, a senior vice president of North America for a software company. Did a lot of work with compression algorithms, motion analysis, those types of things. And but I stepped off from that company when we sold off or licensed off my division, started another small software company, sold that off. But I never in my life was very involved with the politics. I was living in Atlanta when 9/11 hit, for example, and that was a shocker for me because the company I was working for, actually, I tell the story that I stepped off because they licensed off my division, which is true in part. The full truth really is I was in our office. I was heading up to New York from Atlanta on 9/11, and I was supposed to have a meeting with MLB, Major League Baseball, up on Fifth Avenue. And I was stopping by the office on my way to get on the MARTA to head over to the airport. And I look at the monitor that we had in the entryway, and I'm looking at it, and I see the building leaning, and I'm like, that doesn't look right. I'm a motion analysis guy. I'm a video, expert and this, that, and everything, and that just don't look right. And I didn't realize what was going on. And I turned to our receptionist, and she says, "Don't you listen to the news?" "Yeah, not usually, no." Why? Yeah. She goes, "Well, a plane hit the." Oh, I said, "Well, I heard that. I thought it was like a Cessna or something." And they showed the replay on it. I said, "That's crap. That's a freaking airliner." Mm-hmm. I had no idea. I'm thinking, some tree hugger, whack in a Cessna, just decided to make a statement or something. And it's like we're under attack. I mean, I was just shocking, of course. Throughout the course of that day, it became more and more apparent, what had happened. Sure. And I remember the president of our company, he came out, he's from Switzerland, and it's a Swiss company, and everybody's just glued to the TV and talking about it and worried about what's going on. And he says, "So come on, everybody, let's just get back to work. There's nothing, we can do about it. Let's just," and I thought, holy crap, this SOB. I mean, he was a friend, but it made me realize at that moment that he didn't care. I said, about us as Americans. He didn't care about what's happening in our country. He didn't care that we just got attacked and thousands of Americans are dying and is burning. Mm-hmm. He's like, just go back to work. That's a distraction type of thing. And I was mad. I turned around and said, look, anybody who needs to go home right now, go home and be with your family. Go. You're free to leave. I said, Victor, I can't believe you just did this. I can't believe you just said this. I said, you clearly don't care about, what's happening here. You're just here with your company to take advantage of our money and our position and further your company. And that's just, I can't do that. So the fact that they had licensed off my division and that realizing this company was just, that corporate, entity, right? That creature, my conscience couldn't do it. So I left and came home to Oregon. But I still didn't really get involved. It started me going though down the path of paying attention.
Sure, and I think that happened a lot with a lot of people on 9/11. It was a shot across the bow that essentially woke up the modern generation of people that we've been asleep. We've had so much prosperity for so long, and nothing like that's ever happened. Now we can go into the weeds of what was behind 9/11 and what really happened. I have my suspicions, and in fact, it's all pretty much confirmed of what it was used to roll out the Department of Homeland Security and to set up the police state that we're in now. And fast forward, 22 years later, on how far that's progressed, and when we had COVID and the lockdowns and the initiation of that next step, getting into additional controls is we don't understand, with the exposure with what Edward Snowden did and Julian Assange back in the early days, really exposing kind of the deep state and the infrastructure tied in with this. We're now seeing kind of the fermenting and growth of what's come of that. They've gone from beta stages to now actively engaging it. And we're, I don't want to get off too much on it, but I mean, with the banking collapses, there's 186 other banks that are set to collapse as to what they're saying. I think it's actually going to be more than that. They keep saying the word recession. I'm saying the word depression. Because I couldn't see a sustainable model where, there's already been 5 or 6 banks that have collapsed. Deutsche Bank, I think, is right on the edge.
Yeah, they went down 10% yesterday. And that's a significant number.
Yep, and the S&Ps look to dip into 50%. It's just chaos, and in that it's all controlled demolition, right? So to get us further into this thing, and so what the importance is and all the things that you're doing and why I emphasize local, because that's really where our fight is. That's really where all these fights are. And you've been demonstrating, you were with Seth Keshel and you went to Mike Lindell's event.
Correct.
Back in 2020 when they stole the election, or was that 21? I think it was, 21, early 21.
21,
right?
Yeah.
Yep. So
March or so.
In the bed, all that, you went there, you saw it, you saw this election fraud. And so as far as that goes, I'd like to talk about how has that progressed and what kind of successes have we had here in Oregon against some of that voter fraud and voter suppression and stuff that's coming out. I mean, we could talk about it forever, but there's Google, Facebook, Twitter, all those confirmations that have happened with the Twitter files now coming out in the House about how they basically censored, deplatformed, and shadow banned.
Nothing
candidates.
Basically about it. They flat out did it.
100%.
They did it, right?
Yeah, but they did it.
Disgusting.
So sorry. I
just don't want to soften it. That's all.
Well, it is. It's 100% confirmed that they've done all of this. And so what do we do and how and what's going on locally and who's behind it? Who are the fighters that are, actively? I know Angela Plowhead is doing really well and kind of fighting against
she's terrific.
Some of that stuff. So,
it's really interesting because you talk about local, and that's really the key, right? I realized when I looked when I had this bigger picture from having from my software background, technology background allowed me to understand what was happening in the machines really well, and I realized that you can't beat these machines. We're not going to outvote these machines. We've got to stop the corruption, and we can't really we can't do much about the Fed raising their rates, right, or the CBDC stuff going on, and the war in Ukraine and what we just did to Syria and all this garbage that's happening, all these distractions keeping us not looking at the core of the problem. And really what we have to do, the only way we're going to take this thing back, only way we're going to correct course is from the bottom up. We can't do it from the top down. We got to get involved locally, starting at your school board, your
even being a PCP.
Well, being a PCP in your districts is really important in your county, because then you can affect being a PCP. It gives you an avenue to be active in your community, but also within the Republican Party itself, let's say, or whatever party you're affiliated with. But it gives you the ability to become active within that party, and then hopefully that party is giving you tools that you can go out in the community community and start affecting change.
Yep.
So they're getting involved. Like I'm in Clackamas County, and we've done a big turnaround there in Clackamas County, where we've completely changed out the Republican Party's Central Committee to a whole new
you guys
America
have had
First.
Huge victory.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah,
victories.
I was at that conference or the fundraiser that you guys did, and it's powerful just to see the guys and what they talk about.
Packed the room.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it was
packed house. Everybody wants that, and that's the thing. Is that's where the real change and the real fights happen. Is that once you get some real candidates that people can get behind, the people will come. If you build it, they will come.
That's the key, right? What you said there is, in my opinion, one of the challenges that's been lacking within the Republican Party in Oregon. Again, I'm fairly new to all this, but I have, I'm not naive. We don't put good, strong America First candidates in place to really bring out the base of the Republican Party. We still have way too many Republicans, so-called registered Republicans, who are not active in what's happening in our country. They're not awake and aware of what's happening for many reasons. One, we're not making them aware because
Correct.
as a party, we're not actively engaging with our constituents.
We aren't actively engaged in our local communities and going to these events and being a PCP and just sitting in. And one of the things that we were talking about at Political Coffee with Jeff last week is that it just takes you as an individual, it just takes you to get involved and you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know how everything works. But just being there allows you to understand it. And it's just like a muscle. And if you don't exercise that muscle, it'll never grow. But we start out in the trades and you start, doing something initially first, you have to grow into it and you have to be more comfortable with it and see how those types of things work. So
here's a good example of that for me. I get asked to go speak at school board meetings, and I'm happy to do it, but it's frustrating for me. And you get 3 minutes. So I spend the first 30 seconds actually talking to the school board. Then I turn around and I look at the parents and I say, what's going on here? You've got, let's say, 7,000 students in your school, right? That's at least 14,000 parents. 14,000 people. And you're letting this crap go on in your schools. You're letting them teach this garbage, bring this pornography in your school, teach you that boys can be girls and girls can be boys. I'm talking to a friend of mine, my brother down in California, for example. The school district down that his children belong to down there, literally is having a trans. What was it? Not trans. What am I getting mixed up?
Trans bathroom.
Well, no, they're actually having an awareness day where bringing awareness to the contributions of trans people to our schools.
South Salem High School in Salem has a tampon dispenser in the men's bathroom.
Yeah, lots of schools. That was a state mandate. Well, the thing is, you got 14,000 parents, let's say.
Yeah.
And I turn around and there's 40 people in the room. And this can be stopped really easily.
100%.
People talk about this all the time. Yep. They talk about it and they say, "Oh, this is terrible. I can't believe they're doing this." You know what it takes? It takes 400 people showing up in that room and another 100%. 400 in the parking lot and simply saying, "No, we will not comply." We won't comply. You people change these things or get off the board. And we're here to replace you. We got plenty of people in the room that are willing to replace you. So you can either grab your things and stand up and leave, or you can listen to what we have to say.
Absolutely. You're listening to Non-Compliant America. I'm Joshua Michael. We got Don Powers in the house today. Lots of great topics talking about how we can get back, how we can make a change here in our local community. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the foremost state of Oregon in FEMA Region 10, it's your host, Joshua Michael.
Welcome back, folks. Second segment. We're talking about how we can give back locally and how we can do. The fight is all about being local. And you understand the importance of that if you want to look more on a federal level with what's going on. It's the local jurisdiction in New York that is setting this whole precedent in New York with Trump, right? Everybody wants to talk about the Trump arrest thing, and I don't really want to get into it today. But it is a great distraction. And it's a distraction because if you listen to George Soros or some of these big bankers or big NGOs, They are capturing things at a local level. It's all about local. We can't do anything about what's going on federally, right? But there's some great things happening locally and some big fights happening, huge successes in Clackamas County, huge successes with the Greater Idaho movement. And there's been a huge development tied in with that, where there are officials in these counties that are so sick of what Oregon and the legislators in Salem are doing and dictating to them on the east side of this state. It's only pushing them into the hands of Idaho, or whether it becomes a 51st state. You know, the possibilities are endless. You know, this is the American system. The Great Succession is what built this country, right? Us succeeding from that system. So the possibilities are endless. The prime is pumped. As things are getting derailed and as systems are getting derailed, it's leaving a lot of opportunity. Now, these globalists and global corporations think that they're going to build on the rubble of the destruction of this country. They're going to build their new ecosystem, the 15-minute cities, the CBDC tracking programs, all of that stuff. But in the same breath, if we can take back our local communities and take back our local legislations and our local infrastructure, they aren't going to be able to push that through. And as Don was talking about earlier, about 14,000 parents in a school of 7,000 kids, right? Say there's 10,000 parents. All of it takes is a small amount. I mean, 400 people out of 10,000 or 14,000, that is such a tiny amount. But we have to understand that we have to get off of our couches. We have to understand that Netflix and Paramount Plus and all these TV shows and Yellowstone and whatever you guys want to watch and be distracted of, or your kids' soccer games and stuff, yes, that is important. It is important to maintain the humanity in this fight, because that's really what we're fighting for, is the fact that maintaining our humanity, because we're being demoralized in every way that we can, whether it's through the transgender thing, but they're attacking our kids. So it really takes us to figure out a way, embedded into our routines, once a week, twice a week, 10 times a month, whatever it takes to get your commitment, to see what's going on, see what these school boards are voting on, see what your legislators are voting on, see what they're talking about, see how they talk. How do you combat against it? Just go speak your mind. You might not have all the answers, but just getting involved and getting in the arena, that's the American system. That's how we take this stuff back. So Don, in that, I know there's a lot of legislation. There's new bills coming out. The 2001 bill, everybody's talking about right now. What's going on with the 2001 bill and just the government funding, where they're trying to just pay off all the homeless people? And
well, there's 2001, and then closely tied to it is also 5019, and both basically dealing with housing and subsidizing housing, subsidizing rent, more money going to the homeless. But before we get into too much, I just want to remind everybody, XXXY, that's it. There's only two. Anyway. Just a little side note, so to speak.
Little science lesson.
Yeah. Well, yeah, follow the science, right? But I want to touch on that when we get a chance to, because speaking of legislation, but so with 2015 and 2001, we're talking about, huge budgets of over $200 million. And we got the legislators on the Republican side, 50%. The caucus somehow decided among themselves that they're going to go 50%. Half of them voted for it and half of them voted against it. And the quagmire that it puts them in, and I've had a conversation with two of our legislators that voted for this bill, and I wish that they wouldn't have. But here's their understanding, and here's why. And I think it's important that the people understand not just that there was a vote one way or the other, but what happens behind closed doors and why this happens, right? So our legislators are in a minority. So this thing was going to pass no matter what. It was going to pass. So the question is, do you fight it and capitulate to the point where you say, okay, look, I will vote yes and ease up on the resistance, but if you'll take this out or take that out. So I was talking to one of our representatives. I don't want to mention their names right now, even though they have agreed to come on when we can get them on and talk about this, which I think is fantastic. But good, strong patriots who've said, here's the thing, it was going to pass. They're going to pass it. So the best that I could do was offer them a yes if they can take out this, that, or the other thing. Say, I saved $20 million, and I asked them to pull this particular piece out, and which was one of them I talked to encouraged and was able to get them to pull out the piece where they were going to give free pipes.
Yeah.
For example, as part of this, 2000 or 5019. So,
it's like
and that's a big
negotiating,
save.
Negotiating the surrender. Hey, I'll turn myself in, and instead of decapitating all of my limbs, maybe just give me a leg.
Maybe, exactly.
I'll take a leg,
yeah.
Right.
Can take anything. It just can't be a finger, right? And that type of a thing. So, there is something to be said for realizing the reality of it.
100%.
Now, and one of the others mentioned to me, well, we don't want to give the Democrats this talking point that if we don't vote for it, then we don't care about the homeless and we don't care about, and it's like, and I personally am a little more rebellious about that. I'm a little stronger stand on that. Like, no, who gives I had a different word in mind, what the Democrats are going to say about you. They're going to say it anyway.
They're going to say it no matter what.
And you're not going to convince you can sit there and you can tell them, yep, I voted for this. So then I care for, I do care for the homeless. But you're not going to change any votes. You're not going to get them to vote for you and give you anything. You're not going to get the Democrats to start voting for Republicans because, oh, look at this person cares. No.
But in contrary, what about all the Republicans, what they're going to say about you when you do vote for it, right?
No.
How are you not worried about that? And you're contingent or...
Well, it's a matter of they're trying to hit this middle road, and I'm tired of the middle road. There is no middle road. There's no compromise left.
You can't compromise with the terrorists.
You can't. The communists don't compromise.
No, they don't.
So, and people have to realize that that's really what we're in right now, right? And we have been for 35 years, or really more than that in this country, and especially in this state. The communists now control every lever of power in our state. They can control the judiciary, they control the legislature, they control the education system, they control the monetary systems, right? They control every lever of power, and they certainly as hell control the voting systems, right? So what do? Get back, take it locally, and get involved.
That's right. We're going to talk more about that on the other side. Thanks for listening. Non-Compliant America. Visit noncompliantamerica.com. We'll be right back.
It's time to unmask the truth and expose the lies. The occupied forces do not want you to hear this broadcast. Breaking through the censorship and delivering raw, unedited content, it's Joshua Michael with Non-Compliant America.
Hey, yo, so check this out. Yeah.
Welcome back, folks. Third segment. And we got a special guest here today. We got Ivan Raiklin on the phone. And we're kind of diving in, talking about all the local and how we take things back locally and how we get involved locally. I know he has some other news he wants to talk about. But Ivan, welcome. You're in the fight. You are in the weeds. You are putting pressure on these politicians and really putting their money where their mouth is. How are you today, sir?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, foot on neck and apply maximal pressure. And never give up. Always force them into 100%. And if you're not at 100%, meaning, a lot of these rhinos and weaklings have compromised down to zero. The philosophy needs to be they compromise to our 100%. And if we're still not 100%, then we continue to push to make sure that they compromise to our 100%.
And that's just it. We've been talking a lot about, how these Republicans are capitulating to the Democrats and, compromising with them and doing these things. We just have to stop doing that. We need to take a play out of their playbook and make them come to us. The public is behind us. We just need the good candidates and the good people to actually do what the people's will and what the people want.
Right, exactly. And the thing is, some people are like, oh, wow, 100%, you're not even going to compromise. Here's the thing, is that we have certain definitions. We have certain rules. You don't compromise those, like the Constitution, like the Bible, right? Like you have certain things that you do not deviate from. And what are they doing? They're trying to deviate on what a man is, what a woman is, and then they want to promote mutilating their children, not only physically, but mentally. And if you're not fighting back to make sure that doesn't continue in the digital and in the physical sphere, well, then guess what? You're just as much of a problem. So, because it requires folks like you and me to make sure that they don't do this. Because I would put it this way. If you're just sitting in the way, I still have to move you.
Yeah.
Even though you're not doing anything.
That is a great
if you get out of the way, it's a little bit helper. But if you actually jump in and help out, then it makes it easier for folks like us
Yep.
to actually,
Ivan,
problem.
it reminds me, Ivan, of the old Lee Iacocca phrase, right? Lead, follow, or get out of the way. I love
Absolutely.
that one.
And I'm trying to build leaders, right? So, because at the end of the day, you build leaders by actually having events in person where you essentially, if you're coming in person to an event, particularly those that are coming and traveling from a distance, well, guess what? You're already in. You're all in. You're going to dedicate time, effort, and sweat equity into making sure this thing works out. So those events are essentially to activate, mobilize, train, advise, and equip the leaders in the communities, whether it's down at the precinct level, county level, state level, et cetera, right? And then those that you still have to kind of influence the digital battlefield and create content. Because guess what? If you're not creating content, that means you have 0% market share in the competition for ideas. 0, okay?
Yep.
So then people are like, oh, no, I do everything in person. Well, guess what? You do everything in person, but you also have to create content around absolutely everything that you do in person so that you then can compete for the battle of ideas in the digital ecosystem, because a lot of people don't show up in person, and you're not going to get to them. Well, even though your message is promote truth and honesty, and that's kind of simple there.
Well, and that's just it. But that leads me into the other thing. What do you think about this bill that's now going to the Senate and getting punted to the Senate for the banning TikTok and kind of social media construct and stuff like that? What do you think that is, with the Democrats actually getting involved on that and getting behind that? What does that mean? Is that a shot across the bow to China? Because China's basically captured a lot of these tech companies or running them, or what do you think that signifies? The fact, because there's very few times where people have been on board with what the Democrats are doing, because they're just destroy. What do you think that signifies, Ivan? Have you been following that at all?
Yeah, I've been following that. I was there actually just right after you saw the arrest that they made. I think it was a couple days ago. I'm one of the protesters that was in that hearing. But bottom line is, anytime that both parties are doing something, that means they're both in on something to cover up something. Yep. And what is that? Then the next question is, what are they covering up?
Do you think?
They're covering up from us that has exposed the Chinese Communist Party capture of all of our executive branch. Yep. Starting at the White House, the CCP Jiden, Kamala Harris over at the Naval Observatory, and everybody that's downstream from them, right? To include what Chris Wray has been doing in the previous first term of Trump, and then this current totally illegitimate executive branch leadership, right? He's like the lead actor in this. So all these guys are covering up because they see we're coming for them. Yep. We're coming for them because we know that they are captured, and like the country is not going to withstand this much longer. So they have to concede a little bit of ground. And while it looks good in a court of public domain, a court of public opinion, let's face it, TikTok has been on our phones in the collective for China to go ahead and obtain a lot of data. Yeah. And so it's almost as though they've already gotten everything they've needed. Yep. They've already deployed their balloons because Jiden allowed them to do the reconnaissance missions of all of our assets and national security things within the country. I mean, this is a traitor beyond all doubt. This guy, Jiden.
One of the
and then those that are appointed downstream for them, right? So that he gets 10% for himself and his family and those around him. Yeah. And this is kind of like the Democrats know that the gig is up, so they have to make it look like they're not in on the gig, even though they are, right?
Sure. Here's a perspective on this that I've been thinking about a little bit, Ivan. Think about this.
That's my perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective always, brother. One of the things I've been thinking about that I think is playing a factor too is that at the end of the day, TikTok's been handing it to these all the advertising. They've been getting all this advertising dollars, all this money, right? And I think they're handing it to Facebook and Twitter and these other platforms, and these tech people are getting pissed off.
I don't know about any of these platforms. The only ones that I know about are Truth, Telegram, Getter, Rumble. I've heard of those. The other ones that you mentioned, never heard of them.
Point taken.
And if they even exist, I'm not even sure why they exist.
Sure.
Point taken.
Because any platform that does not allow free speech and curates and manipulates because of at the direction of the FBI to go ahead and manipulate the data so that it mutilates the brain of millions of people in the U.S. so that their only reality is TDS. Yep. That's a problem.
It 100% is. It's information war. It's military grade propaganda that's being embedded into our culture through these cell phones. And we always talk about the dangers of cell phones and how they're essentially a Trojan horse into captivating the minds of millions and misguiding people and everything else. But one of the interesting things is with the Twitter files coming out and the drops that Elon's been doing over the past 6 months and exposing that, I think that puts Facebook in the crosshairs, that puts TikTok in the crosshairs for we're coming for them next. And these House of Representatives are getting privy to how this system works, how this scam has been working. So I think by them pushing this through and banning TikTok and doing all of this stuff, it's simply a way for them, just like you said, of covering their tracks, because they know that
they're just buying time until next year.
Absolutely, right? 100%. So in that, shifting gears, we talked a little bit about the local stuff. You had some interesting things. You're going to be meeting McCarthy soon, right? Or talking with McCarthy?
No. So I was invited by Mickey Whithoff, along with she requested a meeting with Kevin McCarthy. He granted that meeting, and his staff reached out to her and asked her who wants to attend with her. And so she asked for me to attend, and then Dave Summerall from Stop Hate to attend the meeting with Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And that was in place, a week up until basically a week prior when they asked. Well, actually, a week prior they asked, and then up until Wednesday of this week, everything was a go. And then midday Wednesday, by the way, the meeting was Thursday afternoon. Midday Wednesday, he gets a response saying that Speaker McCarthy only wants to meet with you. He does not want to meet with, he doesn't want to have Ivan Raiklin there and Dave Summerall. I wonder why. You guys can come to your own conclusions, but if you read my Substack, where I've outlined 13 specific Substacks of transgressions committed by now Speaker McCarthy, but before he became Speaker, it was the leverage that we had in order to educate the country that this guy isn't like clean as a whistle.
Yep.
I use what's known as, in the intel profession, to get a top secret clearance, you go through these adjudicative guidelines that the national security apparatus uses to determine someone's level of risk. And if you're putting someone as a number 3, in this instance, as the top legitimate official within our federal government, because the other two are wholly 100% illegitimate, then you want to have somebody that is clean, fully, right? Mm-hmm. Financially, from the 13 aspects. I don't know, maybe caught wind of that, didn't want me in there, but whatever. When I'm in an official proceeding, I'm a very professional individual, and I use professional language for people that know me and where you've seen me testify. But needless to say, he didn't allow us to be there, but to Mickey's credit, he knocked it out of the park.
Yep.
He had a 30-minute meeting from 2:30 to 3 p.m. on Thursday. One American News was outside to report on it to get her perception. I put it out on my social media now that I have Twitter back as of yesterday for my first account.
Hey, Ivan, hold on real quick. We got to go to a hard break here real quick. Listen to Non-Compliant. We'll be right back.
I know it's rude to be bragging. They never catching us slacking. Me and my buddy, we working hard for this money.
All right, welcome back, folks. Joshua Michael, last segment. We have his special guest, Ivan Raiklin, on the phone. doing great work all around the country. He's traveling, getting in the faces of these tyrants, holding their feet to the fire, and really doing and setting a prime example of what we all as Americans should be doing with the active engagement of this animated contest of liberty, of this great American system as it's being dismantled and undermined by these communist predators all over, and getting in the faces of them and just simply shining a flashlight on them with how great that's able to do and what that they scurry back like
I
rats.
like to shine about 1 trillion lumens on each one.
Yeah.
That's a few.
Yeah. And so doing that, active engage in that, you're talking, before we went to break, you were talking about with the OAN reps being there with McCarthy and kind of the successes that kind of went around that meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think this week was massive, absolutely huge. Like, I don't have the words to describe how much of a pivot this is going to take place in our fight against these commies. Because when Kevin McCarthy had his meeting with Ashley Babbitt's mom, Mickey Whithaw, and then obviously One American News, I mentioned that before the break, that they covered it. Well, guess what? She provided him a couple things, and then he provided her with a few promises in response, which was, he's going to watch the video of Michael Byrd completely stone cold, intentionally murdering for the first time in our nation's history and the only time in our nation's history where someone was murdered inside of the Capitol in 247 years in our country's history. That is the importance of Ashley Babbitt's murder. You don't just brush it under the rug. Unacceptable. He's going to be removed as a speaker in short order if he does not move swiftly to address this issue. Mm-hmm. This is the number one issue within the Patriot movement, hands down, because the reason why she was murdered, there's a couple components, and I put her like a lengthy tweet on his obligations to America next week that we expect of him. And that includes that Ashley Babbitt was there representing election justice rally attendee, to basically demanding that and explaining that the election in 2020 was illegally conducted, illegally certified at the state level, and after they silenced her with the murder, it was illegally certified at the federal level because of no quorum. I've been talking about this.
Yeah.
And so how did that occur? Why did Michael Byrd murder her? It's because the FBI director, Chris Wray, was the one that directed his Elvis Chan and Joe Pientka III in the San Francisco field office to coordinate with the previous general counsel of the FBI, Jim Baker, to manipulate Twitter 1.0 to curate and censor the entire discourse of all social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., to make sure that the populace in America had this mental disorder known as TDS. It was all done by the FBI. Yep. And one of the targets of that was a U.S. Capitol Police officer, Michael Byrd, that ended up shooting out of fear, right? He's thinking that, oh, my gosh, Babbitt. And then also Lila Morris was also a victim of that curated, manipulated TDS injected into her brain to brutalize and beat and murder Roseanne Boylan.
Yep.
That is the frame that everybody needs to understand now that we have the Twitter files. That is the only logical explanation of what occurred. And Kevin McCarthy has a list of things that he needs to watch the video. He'll come to the same conclusion himself because he said he didn't even watch it. There's a laundry list of things that I'm not going to go into detail, but you can take a look at my Twitter. And then the other thing I'll mention is if you go to the Twitter, it's just my last name or first and last name because I have two accounts now.
How do you spell your last name?
Bottom line is I'm putting something out later today, shortly after we hang up here, that is going to really amplify a possibility where we're going to have a redo of the joint session.
Hey, Ivan,
January 6th.
Ivan, real quickly, please, for our listeners, though, spell out the your full name on Twitter so that people will know how to spell it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. My last name is spelled Raiklin. For the military folks, Romeo Alpha India, Kilo Lima India November.
You know, that's something.
If you want to throw the Ivan in front of that, it'll
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things that we didn't touch on on the introduction. Can you give us the elevator pitch real quick on your background? Of course, we know who you are and love you, but not everybody listening may be familiar with you.
Yeah, so I spent a quarter of a century in our national security system as a intelligence professional, tactical, operational, strategic, human intelligence, counterintelligence analysis. Taught it at the premier institution in our intel community on analysis, and then I also commanded a detachment and company level as a Green Beret officer, and I retired as a lieutenant colonel Green Beret. I also did some tech scouting on AI, mixed reality gaming in Silicon Valley as my last reserve assignment. And also I'm a constitutional lawyer. So I'll put that together. Constitutional lawyer meets Green Beret equals America's law offensive coordinator that focuses on deep state marauding.
Equals watch out. Watch out, deep state, because Ivan's coming. But it's not just about you.
Hold on.
It's about
Ivan's coming.
Yeah, it's about all of us.
I shouldn't sing.
Getting together and really understanding the way that these guys operate in the shadows, and the way that they're able to kind of manipulate people into thinking that they're bigger than they are. But it really just shining that light and getting in their face really does a lot of damage to them, because the way that they have to roll out this agenda, now they're starting to expose the agenda, legalize pedophilia in California, and, doing all of these things. They're trying to set the precedent that that's okay, and that's what it is. But it's really telling and coming out. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Here's the default response of a person with an R by their name. They pass a law that says, "Oh, we're not going to allow that." How about not being a toxic, feckless, stone cold coward like your messiah, Mike Pence, and actually be a man and a leader?
Yeah.
And actually do the following. Any school board that put a face toilet on a child, you're going to be charged with child endangerment, asphyxiation, and, you're going to have medical rape on your resume when you're out there after you're fired from your job as a school board attendee.
God, that's a great idea.
All these folks promoting what you just said,
that is a great idea.
It's not stopping it. It's you are now a criminal for doing it.
Yep.
And you're never going to do it again, and your family is going to be ruined for your stupid decision making. That is what needs to happen.
We were talking about that.
Making sure that happens.
We were talking about that a little bit in the first segment, actually, Ivan, how I get asked to come to these school board meetings, and, there's probably, 10,000, 12,000 parents that are in that school district, and I turn around, there's 40 of them in the room, and a handful of them are complaining about CRT and the porn that's being put into the schools and teaching kids, that they can be, girls and boys.
The conniving, racist thing.
Oh, racist and the transgender garbage that they're trying to tell kids they can do and all that
training. And then the mutilation, promoting mutilation. How about, if any of the school board members votes and supports the mutilation of children, the penalty should be mutilation of those that promote that.
Yep.
Meaning they can start with their own necks. Start with mutilating your neck.
I have a little quote here for you. Just one of our senators, Senator Jeff Merkley. We had a chance to get rid of him, but we didn't get it done here in Oregon. But he sent out this, and I sent him a nice little retort, which I'll give you. But he says this: trans women are women, and our celebration of Women History Month must include all women. I am working to pass comprehensive federal legislation like the Equality Act to make sure everyone can live safely and freely as their authentic self. So I sent him an email and I said, okay, so I guess you support free abortions for trans women, right?
Yeah. So we're just wrapping up here, Ivan. Any last words for our guests and our listeners here today?
I got to disagree with everything that you just said there, Don, from this perspective. And I love you like a brother, but here's what I'm going to say on that. The Chinese Communist Party in 2015 secured, through its hack of OPM facilitated by Hussein Biden, through the 10% through the big guy scheme, access to Office of Personnel Management to obtain every single person that has a clearance in our national security system in the government, to obtain all their most intimate files, to have leverage and blackmail over everyone.
Absolutely.
And then they use that over the last 8 years in order to create leverage and capture all of our executive branch institutions at the highest levels. And in addition to that, use them and leverage them in order to be able to take over the content creation scheme of big tech, as I already just talked about, to then make it so that, oh, it's cool to mutilate yourself. Hey, it's cool. All this radicalism that's going forth, it's China manipulating the institutions that they have blackmail over in order to destroy our country from within. And these executives at these private companies, whether it's big tech, big media, get a cut in making the money as they collectively with China destroy our country from within. And both sides are in on it because they have shares in those companies that are making the money hand over fist.
And that's why we have to take it back.
Making a lot of money off of brought to you by Pfizer.
And that's why we have to take it back from the bottom up, one county at a time.
Yeah, last thing, bottom up. You have to get involved at the lower level because if you only are worth $1,000, you can't go after the presidency. You can go after the precinct and maybe the county with a few of your friends. Because if you want to take over the county, you can possibly do that with 10, 12, 15 people. At the state level, you're going after billions. And at the national level, you're going after trillions. So in order to build yourself up to that level, you have to take over precincts and counties. That is how we have to do it.
Absolutely. Ivan Raiklin, where do people follow you? Where do you think the best place to be? Is it your Substack or your Rumble or Twitter?
I'd say my Substack if you want deep dive analysis on what's going on, my Substack, ivanraiklin.substack.com.
Love it.
But if you want my daily musings, Telegram, Truth, and now Twitter. Somewhat thanks to Elon Musk, but I'll give him his credit for now.
All right. Hey, brother, travel safe, man. Really appreciate you.
Keeping an eye on him, though.
All right.
We're watching him close. Yep. Thanks, Ivan. Have a great day.
Love you, brother.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, bye. All right, that's Ivan Raiklin, folks. Thank you very much for listening to this carried over extended version of Non-Compliant America. We have Don here just signing off. Any last words, Don, that you want to reach out to the special listeners here today?
You know, I want to encourage people to check this out. There's an author named Javid Zuniga, and I think I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, he's got a really interesting program called Tactical Civics, and I'm just diving into that. And there's the first book in kind of the starter book, if you will, is called The Great We Set. And it's pretty fascinating. It talks about how you can join Americans taking America back one county at a time and enforcing the Constitution at last. Anyway, I'm looking into it. You might want to check it out yourselves. And thank you all very much.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Thanks for coming in, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. Thanks.
Thanks, man.